Hello, Mr. Lemoine.
Hello, Mr. John Paul. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with the questions.
Perfect.
What are some of the events in your childhood that changed you the way you are right now?
Wow. Well, unfortunately, the biggest one for me was my mom passed away when I was young. And that was kind of a big moment in my life because, it just changed a lot of stuff. I had a very supportive father that was there for me and supportive of things that I did. But, growing up like that it was tough, and it definitely shaped who I am today.
Okay. What did you want to be when you were in sixth grade?
Oh man, I wanted to be everything in every grade. I wanted to be a Ghostbuster at one point. I think by the time sixth grade rolled around, I was probably wanting to be a Secret Service agent because I'd watch a movie and I'd be like, I want to do that. I wanted to be an airline pilot. I wanted to be a cop. I had so many different interests at the time that it just depend. One day I would want to do one thing, and the next day, I think sixth grade was when I wanted to be a writer because me and my friends had started a little comic book company, and we were writing, comic books and stuff. And I wanted to be the CEO of a comic book company. But when you're that age, man, the sky's the limit, and you can do a lot of things. You don't have to just do one thing. You can just enjoy everything.
Okay. What is your favorite job you have done?
Flying fighters. Being a fighter pilot has been the most rewarding thing. It's interesting, it's fun, it's engaging. It challenges you both mentally and physically. There are a lot of good things about it. There's a lot of bad things about it, but there's a lot of good things about it that just make you proud of what you've done.
Okay, that's nice. How has a pilot changed your life in any way?
How has a pilot changed, like being a pilot?
Yeah, how becoming a
Um,
pilot?
it, obviously it became my career. Um, I got my pilot's license when I was 19. I just decided, hey, I was going to go take lessons because I wanted to do something to make myself better. And that started a journey that has lasted, over 20 years. It's been a passion. It's been fun. It has made me better at other things too. We talk about driving race cars and stuff like that. It makes you a more disciplined person because you can apply everything you've learned from flying to other aspects of your life.
Okay. How long have you been flying?
Oh man, now I'm gonna feel really old. Since 2001, two, so 21 years.
Okay. That's pretty long.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a long time. I soloed on my 19th birthday. So yeah, that was back in 2002. And I'd flown a little bit before that, like as a kid, with some different things, but for the most part, officially, since 2002, when I flew a little Cessna and got my private pilot's license. And it's been a fun experience. It's something I would encourage anybody to do.
What is your favorite aircraft you have flown?
Hmm. That's a tough one. The F-16 was a rocket ship. It had so much power. It has such great visibility. You feel like you're sitting on a magic carpet because you're wearing an Iron Man suit because you don't feel like you're in a jet. You feel like it's you with a jet attached to you, and you can just do whatever you want. You can go wherever the jet will take you. Um, I really, enjoyed that time. The F-18 was a great jet too. I really like helicopters. Flying helicopters, while it's not really fast, it's a different skill set. It's a different kind of focus. It's just so different. And hovering is one of the coolest things you can do. It just feels awesome when you can successfully hover and stay in one spot at, 10 feet off the ground. So if I had to pick though, it'd probably be the F-16.
Which is easiest to fly? F-16 Viper, F-18 Hornet, or T-38 Talon?
The F-18. I think the F-18 is the easiest. It's all fly-by-wire, which means there's no direct control linkages. It's all electronic signals being sent to the flight controls. So it helps you out a lot. It's got a lot of things that make it easier to fly because, and the F-16 does too, it's just a little bit more challenging to fly, but not much. The difference between like a fighter and a normal aircraft is fighters are meant to be easy to fly because the goal is to use the weapon systems. The goal is to use it as a tool for combat. So they make it as easy as possible to fly because you're doing so much other stuff. You know, you're working a radar, you're dropping bombs, you're shooting the gun, you're doing a bunch of other stuff versus like the T-38, which is extremely hard to fly. It's one of the more difficult aircraft to fly. It doesn't help you do anything, and you have to be very careful flying it because it will sometimes be more dangerous.
What is the hardest part of being a fighter pilot? Fighter pilot.
Accountability. So as a fighter pilot, you're held to a higher standard, and you have to be able to take your ego and, you know, fess up to mistakes. You know, you have to be able to go to a debrief, which is after a flight. So we, you know, everybody thinks, you know, we just high five and go, but really you spend a couple hours briefing the mission. So we talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to go out and fly. Then we fly the mission. And then the hard part is coming back. And then we break down what we did. We debrief. That's what it's called, the debrief. And we take everything we've done and we analyze it to the smallest degree. And you have to be able to take the criticisms, take the feedback, and not take it personally, because it's not, nothing is about you as a person. It's all about how can we be better? So to be able to sit there and take the constructive criticism, to take the feedback and not think, hey, I'm a bad person. It's just, I didn't do this the way I should have done it. I'll do better next time. And then after that's all done, you still have another, like a job, a ground job. You might be in charge of scheduling. You might be in charge of weapons. You might have some other job. So you have to take all that criticism, store it, go, I don't want to ever do that again. I'm going to learn from it, and then go do another job that has nothing to do with flying. And I think that part is the most difficult part.
Okay. Tell us about your most harrowing experience in an aircraft.
Wow. Harrowing experience in the aircraft. Well, I've been struck by lightning twice. And the first time we were coming back from evacuating for a hurricane, and my jet was struck by lightning, and it actually made all the electrical systems turn off for a minute and then turn back on, which was really disorienting because we were in clouds and you need your instruments to be able to know what to do. It came back, we flew home, aircraft was fine, no big deal. The second time I got struck by lightning, I was in an F-18 and we were flying out to the airspace. I was in a very close formation with my flight lead, and we both got struck because, you know, lightning arcs between two aircraft if they're close enough. And he was actually incapacitated. He said he felt like he woke up from that. And so I was really worried about him. I didn't know what his condition was or anything like that. And I had to lead him back to the airfield, avoiding the thunderstorms we had just flown through, and help him land safely. And I was really worried because he didn't seem like he was out of it. Like he had, you know, it was not good for him. So I had to help him, like in Top Gun, basically on his wing, helping him land from another jet to make sure he could safely land. And I think that was a pretty scary moment because I was very worried about my friend.
Do you think you'll get struck by lightning a third time?
I hope not. I hope not. You know, it's not, most aircraft like airliners and stuff are protected. The F-18 wasn't, the F-16 was. So, you know, it didn't affect me in the cockpit. It just sometimes can affect systems, but anything's possible. I mean, weather is sometimes unpredictable and you can end up in situations that you wish you hadn't been in, but, you know, knock on wood, I hope not.
Have you ever flown in combat?
I have. I went to Iraq in 2009.
What was the difference in training?
So I did it really early in my career. I had just finished training. So the way it works in the military is you start off, you go to pilot training, You fly the T6 and the T-38. Then they kind of increase your training in the T-38 to kind of teach you how to be a fighter pilot specifically. Then you move on to the F-16, and right out of F-16 school, they do a little bit of a training to get you used to how the squadron does things, because everybody does things differently. And my first flight, non-graded, so no grade sheet, no instructor, was a combat mission in Iraq. And the difference is in training, they kind of, training, everybody kind of knows it's practice, it's not the game, it's practice. And when you're in combat, when somebody says, hey, this is a dangerous place, or this is a dangerous situation, don't do this, you take it a little bit more seriously. There's a lot more of a danger or a threat, because you know that the people on the ground are not your friends if you do have to eject, or if something does happen, or if you do end up supporting ground forces, which is what we did. We supported the people on the ground, the Army, the Navy SEALs, and stuff like that. That they're not in training. Things are really happening on the ground, and you really want to make sure that you help keep them safe as much as you can.
How long have you raced cars?
Well, I drove my first race car when I was 16. Really, I haven't. I mean, it's been off and on my whole life. I'll race a little while, and then, not race for a long time, and then race for a little while. In fact, I just got back from Daytona this weekend, racing an ARCA car, or testing an ARCA car. But it's tough to do when you're in the military and flying fighters, because you're so busy and, one track focused. But I'm trying to do more now, but haven't, done as much as I would have liked.
When did you start writing books, and why?
I wrote my first book. We talked about, formative years. I wrote my first book when my mom died. After that, because I used it as a way to cope. It was a thing for me to do to, have an outlet for my feelings, and outlet in fiction. I wrote a story, and I was in 8th grade. So I wrote that, didn't go anywhere, didn't get published, nothing happened to it. But I loved writing. I thought writing was a lot of fun, because it's fun. To me, it was like an interactive video game where you choose what happens, and you make what the characters do whatever you want them to do. You're just making this up in your head as you go. And I'd had some free time after I deployed. I wrote a little bit, then. And then when I transferred from the Air Force to the Navy, I had a lot of free time, and I was like, well, hey, I always love writing. Why don't I try writing a book? And I used that time in 2012, finished the book in 2013, and wrote my first novel then. And from then, it's just fun. It just becomes, you get involved with the characters. The characters feel like your friends, because you've created them, and you love seeing kind of what happens next as you write it.
What is your highest selling book, and what is your favorite?
Ooh, I don't even know if I know that answer. Highest selling book's probably the first one, Spectre Rising, because it was the first one. And, people always try to start at the beginning of the series. My favorite book to write was Finney Flight, because it was fun researching airplanes that I had never flown before, because it involves Russian aircraft, and it had a lot of really cool scenes that were fun to come up with and were fun to create, in a lot of different ways. Especially, I talked to a friend of mine that was an A-10 pilot, and got some cool ideas from him, and then got some other cool ideas from some other friends. So it was like a combination of all the coolest things that I could think of in a fun story, that I was like, well, this would be fun to do if it ever became a movie or something.
How do you come up with the titles for your books?
Oh God, that's the hardest part. The hardest part is coming up with names for characters, titles for the book, and the stuff you write on the back cover. To me, those are the hardest parts. And what I try to do is I go back and I review the book, and I try to figure out what was the theme of the book. Like, what kind of catchy title covers, encapsulates what this book was really about. And sometimes I'm really good at it, sometimes not so much. I mean, it could go either way, But I think that's probably one of the hardest parts about writing. And if I could just have people do it for me, I probably would.
Why did you start your YouTube channel?
Well, I don't know if you watch the channel. A friend of mine named Donkey, that has been on the channel a lot. Back in 2018, I had I was doing the book thing, and he had a YouTube channel. He actually had a YouTube channel about real estate, and he said you should try it because it's a good way to like engage with your audience. Another way to reach out and tell people about what you're working on and stuff like that. And I always like watching YouTube. I like watching car stuff. I'm a car guy. I like watching the Camaros and the Corvettes and stuff like that. So I was like, well, maybe I could combine the two. And it really didn't go anywhere until I did my video on how I became a fighter pilot. And that video was really popular. And I realized that there was an opportunity to help kids like you, or, kids in general, understand that to be a fighter pilot, you don't have to be an astronaut. You don't have to be superhuman. You don't have to be anything but someone that has grit and determination and doesn't accept no for an answer. And that's where Make Them Tell You No came from. Don't be the person that tells yourself no. Let somebody else be that person. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is actually going to be yes.
Tell us a little bit about the charity of Folds of Honor.
So Folds of Honor, I discovered Folds of Honor when I started flying the T-38 at Tyndall, which later became Eglin. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney is the founder, and he was a pilot in my squadron. And he told the story of how he was on a flight home one day, and he saw a service member on an honor flight coming home who had passed away. And he saw their family and how they felt about losing that family member. And he realized that there was not enough being done for the families. And so he created Folds of Honor, which represents the folds of the flag. And in doing so, what they do is they give educational scholarships. So even at your level, at the middle school, high school, elementary school level, college level, they give educational scholarships to the children of those who lost a parent in the service of their country. So even if it's training, and now I think they also do law enforcement as well, which I think is really cool because I do law enforcement. That's another thing that I do.
Thank you, Mr. Lemoine, for your service as a fighter pilot serving our country. Thank you for answering my questions.